This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
At least 9 killed in inter-ethnic conflict in South Sudan's Jonglei state. First Johnson & Johnson COVID vaccine doses donated by the EU begin arriving in Africa. And Chinese President Xi Jinping says China to set up comprehensive strategic partnership with ASEAN. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines. In business, Sudan says that it is committed to reforms proposed by the IMF. And experts warn that South Africa's economic recovery and development strategy may not be the optimal approach to the country's recovery. Well, Africa Live begins in South Sudan, where at least 9 people have died in inter-ethnic fighting in Jonglei State in the eastern part of the country. Jonglei State Governor Denia Jagor says that the people had been killed in 2 separate incidents over the weekend. The violence was sparked by an ambush of 2 young men by attackers allegedly from the neighboring Greater Pibor administrative area. The incident was reported and angered youth from the Dinka community who retaliated by attacking people from Pibor residing in Bor town. Authorities have begun investigations into the incident. Waves of intercommunal violence between the 3 neighboring communities of Dinka, Bor, Lunur, and Muri had reduced since May because of flooding in the state. Well, for more on that story, CGTN's Patrick Uyed is joining us live from Juba for the very latest. Hi, Patrick. What more can you tell us about these attacks?
Yes, Hannah, just as you rightly said, this issue started with 2 young people who were riding on a motorcycle. They were attacked, they were killed, and then the community from which these 2 people came suspected a neighboring community of having killed those 2, and the community responded by killing 7 innocent members of that community they suspected of having killed the 2. That's what brought the number to 9. And it should be noted that Jonglei State has been actually peaceful the whole of this year. Relative peace has returned to that place, but that's a place that has actually in the past been very, very volatile when it comes to issues of intercommunal violence, because the majority of the tribes that are there or ethnic groups that are there are cattle keepers who are armed, and they always attack each other for raiding cattle, sometimes for child abduction and women abduction. But in the recent past, we've seen that had actually stopped. There was a peace conference and things were moving well. So this has come more or less like a surprise to many, because also with the flooding that has been going on in that state, communities that were once, were some time back conflicting, started living together in harmony. So there was some relative peace. So this is really a surprise to many.
And how does this play out going forward, Patrick? And how are people in the Jonglei state in particular, as well as the South Sudanese government, dealing with this latest situation?
It's very difficult. It's always very difficult to deal with the intercommunal violence in this country because, first of all, as I said before, most of the people, most of the community members are really armed, and also most of the community members do not really, like to follow the law because one, like what has happened now is that it is going to be very difficult for the government even to get the culprits to book, because these people pretend to be acting on behalf of the community. For example, the revenge attack that killed 7 people. Therefore, it will be very difficult for the government even to extract these people from the community, because the community would feel also obliged to protect those people who committed the crime. They feel that those people acted, to protect their community, so they would not want to reveal them. That is number one. Number two, the fact that these people are armed, even if the government apprehends them and puts them in a police station. We have seen situations where, armed youth come and remove people who are suspected of having committed crime from police station, because they come with a lot of arms, a lot of them, and they come and overpower the police. So it is really very difficult for the government to handle the situation, even though they say they are investigating. It is always a challenge. And that lack of rule of law is also promoting this kind of revenge, because now we have seen the two communities actually exchanging, releasing different press statements, one accusing the other, saying at least investigation must be done. Those who committed the offense must be brought to justice. And if that is not done, then you expect also the other community to revenge. So that's really the challenge that the government is facing at the moment.
Patrick, we've run out of time, but I want you to tell us really, really quickly. You have spoken to us about the government's drive just to disarm people, or to have people hand in their arms. How is that going?
Yeah, it is difficult, because now what the government is doing is to encourage voluntary return of guns and ammunition that people have, because trying to use force is really very difficult. The government tried to use force in one of the states in Warrap, in the northern part of the country, and the community responded by actually confronting the military head on. So the government is only now trying to appeal to people to hand in guns voluntarily. So it's still a long way to go. It's still a long way to go, the issue of disarmament.
Thank you so much, Patrick Ayed, speaking to us from South Sudan's capital, Juba. Well, the first of nearly 100 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine have begun arriving in Africa. The first doses reached Niger, according to the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The doses were delivered via the Gavi Vaccine Alliance. The EU has pledged to share at least 500 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to low and lower middle-income countries. Guinea, Mauritania, the Central African Republic, and Djibouti are among the countries set to receive the donated doses. We're now joined by CGTN's Giles Gibson, who is in Brussels for us. Hi, Giles. J&J vaccines donated by the EU have begun arriving on the African continent. What strategy does the EU have to distribute those doses to African countries?
Well, the group of countries that's donated these doses is being called Team Europe, and that's because it's naturally not just the European Union, it is the 27 EU member states plus Norway and Iceland also joining in. In terms of where the shipments are going to be going, we've been told that Nigeria is going to get the largest slice of the pie, if you like, 2.8 million doses. Then Togo is going to get 650,000, Niger getting 500,000, and then there will be several million spread out over several other countries on the African continent. It's worth noting that these are Johnson & Johnson vaccines, so as they say in the United States, they are one and done. So every single dose that's been donated by this grouping, Team Europe, represents one person who's going to be fully vaccinated against COVID-19. That's as opposed to the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccines, which of course require 2 doses for you to be fully vaccinated. Also worth noting that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is much easier to store. You only need to keep it in a regular refrigerator versus some of the ultra cold storage that's required for vaccines such as the Pfizer one. In terms of the distribution, that's not really the EU's role now that they have donated these vaccines. That is really the COVAX facility is going to be in charge of that. That, of course, has been organised by Gavi as well as the other partners such as the United Nations and the World Bank. And the European Union is not giving up this 100 million doses. They want to push forward, and the aim is to hit 500 million doses donated to vulnerable countries around the world, lower income countries, by the middle of 2022.
Thanks for that, Giles. Well, let's bring in Tasem Makinde, who is in Jos, Nigeria, for us. Hi, Tasem. Nigeria, one of the countries expected to receive the J&J doses this week from the EU. When do you expect for these doses to arrive, Tasem, and how is the government planning to distribute and administer these donated vaccines?
Well, we made efforts to reach out to the authorities, health authorities who are in charge of administration of these vaccines, but all efforts haven't been fruitful yet. There's been no communication to members of the press. But so far, we have just about 3%, about 2.9% of the Nigerian population fully vaccinated for COVID-19. And so Nigeria really looks forward to these vaccines arriving. The country looks forward to having, a lot of the population vaccinated. A very densely populated country of over 200 million people. And so having just about 2.9%, of the population being administered fully for COVID so far is not the best. But still talking about administration of these vaccines when they eventually arrive, there have been several plans by the government of the day. In recent past, we've had the government strategizing, at getting to worship centers, churches, and mosques to have these jabs administered on citizens. There have been campaigns as well to ensure that citizens voluntarily avail themselves to have this jab. And so the country is really waiting. There's been no official statements from the National Primary Healthcare, which is actually the agency that actually handles all of this. We've made efforts to get all of that, but there's no pronouncement yet. And so we're following up on them. We will continue following up on them until we have the specifics, and of course, we keep you updated. But so far in Nigeria today, the government is making sure that it's making efforts and is trying to ensure that, look, you citizens, you need to have these jabs. And it's also really some cherry news that the vaccines coming in, over 2.7 million of those doses from the 100 million coming from the Johnson & Johnson coming in. More of that is coming to Nigeria, about 2.78 million, coming to Nigeria. Other countries have just in hundreds of thousands, but Nigeria has over 2 million, in the neighborhood of 3 million. So this is some cherry news. There's no official statement saying that, but I can say that, look, the government has always anticipated and has been looking forward to more vaccines. And so this is some cherry news, I would say.
Thank you so much for that. Tissem Makinde speaking to us from Jos, Nigeria, and Giles Gibson was speaking to us earlier, and he's in Brussels, Belgium. Well, let's head over to Kenya now, where there are concerns that the lengthy closure of schools during COVID-19 has widened the disparities in the education sector, risking the futures of students from poor backgrounds. Experts are now calling for a national conversation on the issue to ensure that every student has an equal opportunity to get good education. CGTN's Rapman Nagila has that story.
At the Great Achievers Education Center in Kibra, an informal settlement in Nairobi, these 5-year-olds are taking an English class. Schools in Kenya reopened in January this year after a 9-month closure due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The school director says the disruption led to an increase in the number of dropouts.
Out of a population of 125 children, 30 of them went and did not come back.
Since reopening, he says the school's seen a rise in disciplinary cases. But the biggest challenge is the children's focus.
A lot of absent-mindedness has cropped in on a large scale, and therefore concentration is actually very, very little.
The problem for many children, according to an education expert, is that the structure, discipline and focus provided by schools was missing.
Once education was stopped, it was stopped for everyone. And a very small percentage of children are the only ones who manage to keep accessing education. And it showed that some of our systems, while they are in place, are difficult to use when kids are not in school.
A sharp contrast to children from middle-class families like the Johnsons. Apart from a brief disruption, their school provided online classes for much of the year. This was possible because they have access to computers and the internet at home, which many low-income families cannot afford.
The online schooling, which was cool at first, but then it got kind of irritating real fast.
As long as people do something creative every day and get their exercise and get out of bed on time, school helps.
Experts say to ensure education equity and equality for students, all stakeholders in the sector must come together to determine a way forward.
The world has gone digital. What is it that we can do to make sure that Kenyan children are not left behind? We have to have this national discussion. We have to have it at community level, churches, at the lowest level of community.
The problem goes beyond the classroom. There are socio-economic issues at play, and to come up with a solution will require a lot of resources and commitment from all involved. Robert Nagela, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
In news from outside the continent's borders, Chinese President Xi Jinping says the country is establishing a wide-reaching strategic partnership with the Association of South Asian Nations. Xi made the remarks via video link when addressing a summit commemorating the 30th anniversary of ASEAN-China ties. The president says that the partnership is a milestone that will inject new vitality into regional stability and development. President Xi also says that the valuable experience of multilateral cooperation over the past 30 years should be upheld and cherished. He calls for building a safe, prosperous, and friendly home with ASEAN countries. Well, from trade and security to food and public health, China and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations reiterated their commitment to cooperation in many fields. After a special virtual summit marking 30 years of talks, they issued a statement calling for a new comprehensive strategic partnership. They also reaffirmed respect for each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as emphasized the need to promote an environment conducive to negotiations regarding a code of conduct in the South China Sea. China reaffirmed its support to the bloc in playing a bigger role in the United Nations, the G20 and APEC. Our reporters Rian Meltzer in Kuala Lumpur and Li Jinhua in Beijing have more.
This comes, of course, after ASEAN and China already have a well-established free trade agreement and are now partners in this huge free trade deal, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. But a comprehensive strategic partnership just opens the possibilities of cooperation and collaboration in a whole number of other spheres, and just generally to deepen that collaboration. In a sense, this summit was building on last month's ASEAN-China summit, which happened on the sidelines of the main ASEAN summit, virtually hosted by Brunei, and a number of the same topics continued to crop up. So one would be, of course, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, with several of the ASEAN countries yet to ratify this deal, although they signed it a year ago. Malaysia is among those. So the push is for these countries to quickly sign the deal, ratify the deal, so that it can kick into gear, and that can help accelerate the economic recovery for the region. But above all, this summit is really about emphasizing how far ASEAN-China relations have come over the past 30 years and laying the groundwork for that to continue and even deepen as we move forward.
We know the focus is comprehensive. That is the key word, and that is for sure the most important message from the summit. It's the highest level of relationship possible between governments, and this means their relationship will go further than simply trade agreements. We have been talking about trade agreements a lot, and both sides are expected to align laws as well as security this time with a new or upgraded partnership signed. So this is definitely a milestone of China-ASEAN relations. As for the future relations, if we look at President Xi Jinping's proposals, they come in this particular order. The first two are focused on peace, then a prosperous home, then a beautiful home that is about ecological conservation. The last one is about amicable home together. So what is likely to dominate the future relations from what we can see is maintaining regional stability. The strategic comprehensive partnership is likely to play a positive role in stabilizing regional security in the South China Sea, of course. China and ASEAN have been holding talks for years to draft a code of conduct to avoid confrontation. And such a draft was made in 2018, but little progress has been made. But now with the upgraded partnership signed, it is unlikely tensions will turn into open conflict. As for a prosperous home, it refers to a slew of measures to shore up economic cooperation on both sides, including RCEP, China-ASEAN Free Trade Area, Belt and Road Cooperation. China has also applied to join the CPTPP, as said, which is set to boost their trade volumes. So apart from security, there shall be more cooperation on combating the pandemic. So the upgraded partnership will for sure make a difference in multiple areas in the near future.
It's time now for us to take a short break. More in Africa Live when we return, including Nigeria's military commanders consider recruiting veterans in fight against terrorism. And scientists in Uganda are encouraging more people to consider adding insects to their diet. Welcome back to Africa Live. Well, let's head over to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least 12 people have been killed in attacks in villages and a center for the internally displaced in the northeastern province of Ituri. Some civil society groups are worried that the death toll could be much higher than what is being reported. According to the military, the attacks took place on Sunday night. Fighters from the Codeco militia are reported to be behind the raid in the village of Drodro. Codeco has been blamed for killing hundreds of civilians in the Juju district of Ituri province since 2019. Well, CGTN's Chris Ochamaringa is in Kinshasa, DRC's capital, and joins us now for the very latest. Hi, Chris. What more can you tell us about these latest killings?
Yes, Hannah, this attack happened in an area, village known as Drodro in the northeastern province of Ituri. That area is a camp for the people who have been internally displaced, and the local authorities there are saying that a militia group known as the Cooperative for the Development of Congo, Codeco, raided the area, burnt several houses and killed civilians. Now, there has been a report by an international organization called the Kivu Security Tracker that said that 107 bodies were found in eastern DRC, but like you mentioned, the DRC army has refuted that figure. The army spokesperson, Jules Ngongo of Ituri province, said there were only 12 bodies that they found this morning, and they said they found there were 6 children who were killed, 4 men and 2 women. They said the army was reinforced by the Congolese troops who managed to kill 9 fighters of the Codeco militia. They're calling on people to remain calm. They're promising to protect the people in that area, but very many people in Ituri province are sick and tired, of the statements by the government, because these attacks happen on almost a weekly basis, and they have increased in intensity ever since the government declared a state of siege in May this year. So people want solutions and want them now. Hannah?
Well, Chris, just as you've mentioned, I was about to say this, on a regular basis, we hear about these reports of civilians being killed in various parts of the DRC, and it sounds as though it's especially in the Ituri and North Kivu regions. Are there any gains being made by DRC security forces against these militants, Chris?
No, the security situation in North Kivu and Ituri province has gotten worse than the previous period before the government declared a state of siege in May this year. According to a study by a civil society organization in Ituri province, in North Kivu province, more than 1,300 people have been killed in those 2 provinces ever since the government declared the state of siege. Now, before the state of siege was declared, it was about 500 people. Basically, what has happened is that the government replaced all civilian leaders in Ituri and North Kivu with the military and the police to ensure that the killings stop. But then, there has been an increase in the killings, and people are wondering. The government just 2 weeks ago extended the state of siege for the 12th time. And MPs from Ituri and North Kivu have been up in arms, telling the government that this strategy is not working, people are still dying, and they have been calling on the government to change the strategy to improve the discipline of some of the Congolese soldiers who are in those operations there. And there is a group of MPs, Congolese MPs, who are in favor of a proposal to have a neighboring country, Ugandan troops, the UPDF, to come in and help the government to end the Allied Democratic Forces. This is a militia that is originally from Uganda that's operating there, that has been blamed for many of the attacks. The government, the DRC government, has expressed willingness to have UPDF, but it's a very thorny issue. There are now some Congolese who are very, against that decision because of the past history of Ugandan military operations in the DRC and neighboring countries like Rwanda that fought in this country. And so some Congolese do not want to see a repeat of any conflict between neighboring countries in this region. Hannah?
Thank you so much for all those details. Christo Chamringa speaking to us from DRC's capital, Kinshasa. Let's head over to Nigeria now, where military commanders there are considering engaging retired soldiers to support the fight against terrorism. They need the expertise of veterans in information and intelligence gathering, community sensitization, and mobilization. Retired soldiers say that it's a good idea. Correspondent Sema Kende tells us more.
Aloysius Akuaka retired from the Nigerian Army at the rank of Major in 1979. He is visited on this day by other retired military officers, and they are discussing insecurity in the country. Major Aloy, as is fondly called, says ex-war veterans like him are willing to contribute towards improving the security situation if they are given the opportunity.
It's in the interest of the country to utilize the best of their material. And if those materials are a little rusty, they should find a way to brush them up and get the best from them. I thank the Nigerian Army that gave me the chance to acquire all this training. If I'm given an opportunity to give back some, I would take it. Most retired people are supposed to be on active service.
Nigeria has been battling insurgency for over 10 years. Senior government officials like the governor of Katsina State in the country's northwest say the nation's military is overstretched in a bid to tackle security challenges. The armed forces are now engaged in internal security operations in 33 out of the 36 states in the country, which is primarily the responsibility of the police. But many Nigerians have mixed feelings about recruiting retired army soldiers.
Bringing ex-soldiers that they have retired, to me, it's not an idea. It's not an idea at all. Let them go retired, take their pension, and go and relax with it. Bring these young Nigerians in that they are suffering, no job doing. Bring them in. They are going to fight all these terrorists in Nigeria.
They are experienced hands, and if they can come in as consultants and people who can direct and give us a strategic plan on how to conquer Boko Haram, I think it's cool, but not them coming to go forefront of the field. But if they have plans, if they have strategy that can help Nigerians to combat this situation, I think it's very, very okay, and I think it's very all right.
The United Nations says the more than a decade-old insurgency in Nigeria has claimed over 35,000 lives. The global body says the insurgency has also led to the displacement of over 2.1 million people in the country.
The federal government in September this year gave the armed forces a March 2022 deadline to eradicate insurgency and other acts of criminality bedeviling the country.
Defense authorities believe seeking the services of retired army veterans like Major Aloy, especially for intelligence gathering, is a good step to meeting that deadline. Tesem Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Well, following 2 failed rainy seasons, many counties in Kenya are facing drought. This has heavily impacted the country's livestock farmers. Dwindling water sources mean that less grazing grounds for their livestock. Let's take a look.
We are pastoralists. The pastoralists who are here are really affected by the drought. Those who had about 100 goats now have about 20 goats remaining. Those who had about 100 cows now have about that remaining. Many have died as a result of the drought, and people are suffering. Even our children cannot go to school and study well because of the drought.
The situation here in Isiolo, the drought situation in Isiolo, currently we are in what we call the alarm stage of drought, which is stress-based according to the IPC, and the situation, the trend is worsening. This is because since 2020, the October, November, December rains, together with this year, March, April, May rains have failed. So we have two failed seasons that have actually made things worse, because here we depend for rains, and that is why the reason we are getting drought at this particular time. And currently we are seeing that some sectors have been affected mostly, and especially water sector has been affected. All our surface water have dried up. Dams, ponds, 100% have dried up. We are only depending on boreholes and few sand dams.
Over in Uganda, scientists are encouraging more people to consider adding insects to their diet in a bid to boost their intake of nutrients. Apart from the white ants that remain popular, grasshoppers are also a major delicacy in Uganda. CGTN's Hilary Ayestiga tells us more.
It's a grasshopper season. Abdallah Sibulala positions the trap to harvest the green hoppers. Grasshoppers, locally known as insenene, are a delicacy here in Uganda.
That's a sign that the grasshoppers arrived late. They first take a rest somewhere, and when we switch on the lights, they come out.
When the insects hit the traps, they slide right into the drums. They are later harvested. The hoppers are then stripped of their legs and wings. They can be either boiled or pan-fried.
They are really tasty. You do not have to add oil to fry them. They have their own natural oils.
Ugandan scientists are now encouraging more locals to include grasshoppers on their menu because of its nutritional benefits.
Grasshoppers have quite a number of nutrients that are beneficial to our bodies. The major three nutrients that they have, we have proteins, we have fats, we have carbohydrates.
But the insects are seasonal. Grasshoppers are harvested twice a year, and to keep them on the menu, Ugandan scientists are studying their biological habit to enable farmers to breed them throughout the year. The traders are concerned that they are seeing less hoppers coming into the market. They blame the decline in insect numbers on human activities that are destroying their natural habitats.
Grasshoppers thrive in a well-protected environment. The more we cut down forest, we're going to miss the delicacy.
According to Global Forest Watch, Uganda has lost 7.6% of its tree cover in the last 18 years. Environmentalists are now campaigning to save the natural habitats for the hoppers. They are planting more trees to restore the forest cover, a move expected to improve grasshopper harvests, but also boost the nutrition for those who love the hopper delicacy. Hilary Ayestiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
We're heading back to the Democratic Republic of Congo now, where gunmen have killed a police officer and kidnapped 5 Chinese nationals working at a gold mine. According to the Chinese embassy in the DRC, the incident took place in the village of Mukera in South Kivu province. The embassy is urging Chinese citizens living in the area to leave as soon as possible. Earlier, we spoke with Gaius Shibalepa, a local radio journalist based in Uvira, a city in the DRC South Kivu province.
The whereabouts of the abducted Chinese nationals remain unknown for the time being. Sources within the Congolese military also speak of mystery surrounding the identity and motives of the kidnappers. The Congolese army is currently at the scene of the kidnapping. The soldiers are reported to have put another 8 Chinese nationals under their protection so as to ensure their safety. These are the latest reports we are getting from the ground. So far, the Congolese national authorities have not made any other comment in public on the kidnapping. However, Congolese military officers and officials from the South Kivu provincial administration have increased security measures around other Chinese nationals in the region. There are also reports that these provincial authorities are investigating operations by Chinese nationals in the area, especially in Mukera, where the kidnapping took place. This is largely a mining area. The authorities are also investigating the protection of the kidnapped Chinese nationals by Congolese police at the time of the attack.
Your business news is coming up after the show break, including Sudan says that it is committed to reforms proposed by the IMF. And experts warn that South Africa's economic recovery and development strategy may not be the optimal approach to the country's recovery.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The little tents here, bottles are being thrown. As they do so,
there are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
the front line. Within clear view of this front line position.
Well, in the day's business news, South African Airways says that it is stopping its daily return flight between Johannesburg and Mozambique's capital, Maputo, from December the 1st. SAA has cited poor performance as a reason for ending the flight. The new measure is seen as part of the national carrier's strategy to return to profitability. SAA returned to the skies in late September after being grounded for almost 18 months and following a bitter business rescue process. The leaner airline resumed operations with 7 destinations, including only a single domestic route between Johannesburg and Cape Town. SAA has slowly been expanding its reach to other parts of the continent, including Mauritius. The airline says that plans are underway to resume flights to Lagos, Nigeria by mid-December, just in time for the festive season. Well, South Africa's economic recovery and development strategy launched by President Cyril Ramaphosa 12 months ago may not be the optimal approach to the country's recovery. Well, that's according to a new report. Angela Coppola tells us more.
The report, prepared by the Center for Development and Enterprise, suggests that localization, one of the pillars of the new policy as an approach to industrialization and development, won't achieve its goals.
We see this as an anti-export strategy and a strategy that will not increase South Africa's competitiveness as an economy, nor will it increase our competition within the economy. So we think this is the wrong priority and it's a misguided policy.
The country faces several challenges, the biggest being its 12 million unemployed people. Bernstein says this policy is misguided.
It seems attractive to say we want to encourage government to spend money on domestic firms and we'll hold on to the jobs that we have. But we think this is short-sighted, that it fails to appreciate there will be some firms that benefit from this policy, but it fails to appreciate the costs to government, to the economy as a whole, to consumers, and to our competitiveness.
Part of South Africa's challenge is its distance from all major developed markets, but there's a potential solution closer to hand.
You have a plus 50 country policy program called the African Continental Free Trade Agreement in place, which is trying to promote exactly this. And this would be a first step in the direction then of policy coordination. How would our industrial policy correspond with regional policy? And the African Continental Free Trade Agreement gives some big clues on that.
Another aspect that hasn't been sufficiently investigated in this industrial policy is the skills requirement to make the policy work.
Are they available? Can they be imported? Here, South Africa needs to look to its scarce skills immigration policies. There is a squaring up to that, but I would venture not broad enough and not quick enough.
The Center for Development and Enterprise is calling for focus on certain key issues.
So get the environment right, fix the labor market regulations, not wholesale, but carefully calibrated reforms, fix our education and skills system. So these are much higher priorities in our view.
South Africa's economic growth rate is languishing at the moment, and government policy needs to change and change quickly in order to take advantage of any opportunities. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, South Sudan's government says it is committed to reforms proposed by the International Monetary Fund to try and stabilize the economy. The Washington-based lender wants to see more transparency in the government's financial transactions in return for more support. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from Juba.
South Sudan's economy depends on oil to fund 98% of its budget, but floods like these have impacted production and government coffers, and high-ranking officials claim the country is broke. Over the years, South Sudan has turned to the International Monetary Fund for help. The lender injected more than $500 million, which has helped the central bank to bring the value of the pound on the parallel market closer to the official rate.
Unification of the exchange rate market, very important for facilitating export promotion and further industrialization in the country, and also promoting transparency in the use of government resources. We think are going to be very important going forward.
Every month, South Sudan's government earns money from the sale of crude oil, but just how much it receives is not revealed to the public. The government now promises to embark on reforms that will promote transparency.
And we are also going to improve on management of our cash. We are going to improve also the collection of our revenue and to minimize little gaps which are there and small and any kind of corruption.
South Sudan's President Salva Kiir has appointed and sacked 3 finance ministers in the past 2 years while trying to find a lasting solution to the country's economic crisis.
President Kiir says some of his former finance ministers were not transparent in their financial dealings and even kept him in the dark despite being the head of state and government.
Many Juba residents are urging the country's finance ministry and the central bank to do more to improve the economy.
The government is not paying salaries of civil servants regularly. When civil servants are not paid, there's no market for our products because our clients are civil servants.
6 years of civil war have also had their impact. Businesses have been forced to close and people are without work. The pandemic has worsened an already dire economic situation, and the majority of the people cannot now afford basic goods. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Another short break coming up, but here's what's coming up when we return. South Africa's tourists take part in an international Take a Hike event by climbing Table Mountain.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
In Cape Town, South Africa, visitors to the world-famous Table Mountain spent the international recognized Take a Hike Day this week by walking up the slopes of the mountain. Along with taking in the scenic views, many stopped to collect some of the litter left behind by less caring visitors. This is the second time the Table Mountain Aerial Cableway Company hosted the community event. Renee Delcom tells us more.
The Table Mountain Aerial Cableway says it's dedicated to protecting and limiting the damage to the flora and fauna on this iconic South African landmark. That's why it hosts a mountain cleanup day on Take a Hike Day. And not even the bone-chilling cold could dampen the visitors' and hikers' enthusiasm.
It started off raining and it was cold and miserable, and we had so many people turn up, and we've already surpassed last year's target or last year's numbers, and we're up to 300 already. So that's been it's been phenomenal. We've had schools rock up with 150 kids and parents and teachers. So the response from the city has been amazing.
Take a Hike Day was created to encourage people to get out in nature and enjoy the views and fresh air. And Table Mountain Cableway says it also uses the initiative to remind people of their responsibility to take care of their natural heritage.
The mountain is there. You don't have to pay a fee to go up the mountain. It's for free. So I decided, since I've been enjoying it for the past couple of months, I might as well come and clean it up.
I value the mountain very, very much, and it's very sad for me to see how much pollution is laying around. I mean, because this is for free. We get to enjoy it every day as citizens of Cape Town. So it's sad to see this. So that's why when they told us that we're going to do a cleanup, I was like, yes.
Hikers who spent the day picking up litter were rewarded with a free cable car ride back down the mountain.
Ladies and gents, thank you for joining us at Table Mountain Aerial Cableway. Please have a safe travel to your next destination.
Besides being the top tourist destination in Africa, Table Mountain has also been nominated for the world's leading tourist destination award for 2021, and for the first time ever as the best cable car ride in the world.
Very, very, very exciting. We've never been nominated in this category before, and we've been around for 92 years. So if we do win, that's going to be a huge honor.
And after hosting yet another successful Take a Hike cleanup initiative, Table Mountain Cableway says it's looking forward to an exciting holiday season as local and international visitor numbers start to pick up. Renee Delcalm, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
For lovers of cars, the Los Angeles International Auto Show is back again in person after a year's hiatus due to COVID-19. Automobility LA is hosting the world's top car makers as well as local startups showcasing their latest designs and technology. This year's buzz is all about zero emission, all electric vehicles, the long range. Our correspondent Edis Tiensen reports.
Long range, zero emissions may be the most frequently used words in this year's auto show in Los Angeles. With nearly all the big brand automakers revealing their all-electric vehicles coming to the market next year.
This vehicle will be released next summer, is a zero-emission all-electric vehicle that you plug in. That range on one of the vehicles is up to 250 miles of distance, or over 400 kilometers.
Aside from legacy brands, Southern California startups like Fisker and Mullen Automotive have also taken the stage. This year's international highlight is VinFast, a Vietnamese automaker that plans to enter the US market next year with its first all-electric SUVs.
The Model 5 EV crossover.
The auto show also hosts the Zero Emissions Vehicle Awards, also known as ZEVAs, in 9 categories divided by car types and price points.
Amid a global effort to tackle climate change, the key word for all automakers here appears to be zero carbon emissions. They're all trying to come up with new all-electric vehicles while competing with each other to make sure they have the best performance, battery power, and range. But at the age of internet, they're also trying to come up with these new concept ideas where cars are connected to us in several ways and they have more autonomous driving options now.
New cars are not only getting smarter but also more functional and comfortable, as new concept ideas include U-shaped back seats with a lounge feeling for those who may want to work inside their car or even hold meetings. As futuristic as they seem, the EV market is already growing fast, and so is the infrastructure that it requires.
And this is really the capital of EV charging and EVs in the U.S. We just completed our 200th charging station just last week, and that is a very fast pace for us in just 3.5 years of installation. So, and we're going to be adding more stations to this state and other states.
Electrify America alone aims to build 10,000 fast charging stations across the US and Canada by 2025. At a time when California prepares to completely phase out of combustion engine vehicles by 2035. It is Tianshan, CGTN, Los Angeles.
The sport news coming up, including Mamelodi Sundowns ladies arrive back in South Africa after claiming its historic CAF title in Egypt.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
In sports, South Africa's Mamelodi Sundowns ladies football club returned home to a resounding welcome on Sunday as the newly crowned champions of Africa following their 2-0 triumph over Ghanaian outfit Asaka's ladies in Friday's historic final held in Cairo. CGTN CS Duplessis was at their arrival in Johannesburg and filed this report.
It was a party atmosphere on Sunday morning as the supporters of Masanda Wanda gathered in their numbers to welcome the new Continental Club champions. Dancing, beating drums and a DJ playing supporter songs greeted the triumphant squad as they proudly displayed the coveted CAF Women's Champions League trophy.
As Mamelodi Sundowns Football Club, a South African football club, a football club that fielded the first 11 in the final was all South African women. There's a very special moment that I think we find ourselves in that the future of South African female football looks very, very bright. And without sounding too cliche, I think the future of South African football, I think the sky is the limit for where it can go.
Captain Zanele Nhlapo believes that the collective effort from everyone involved was key to their success.
So we had to focus, like I said, to work hard. The team spirit, you know, the girls were always excited, singing and dancing, you know. I've said this before, that when you're in the team, you need the young players and also the experienced one, because when you mix those two, you get the energy, you know. So I think teamwork, it helped us a lot.
Head coach Jerry Chabalala lauded the effort of his charges and believes that the women's game in South Africa is headed in a positive direction.
When it comes to club competition, there we are again. South African team showed that our standard here in South Africa, it has grown leaps and bounds. And as I've said there, you could also see from our junior teams in the junior teams that they are doing quite well. But it's something that we still need to nurture and take care of it, see to it that we dominate everywhere.
As the triumphant Mamelodi Sundowns ladies team enjoy the spoils from their continental conquest, it shines a positive spotlight on the women's game in South Africa and how far it has come in a relatively short space of time. The achievement on the field goes beyond just a result. It's a watershed moment and one that will set the tone for the foreseeable future. CS Duplessis, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, Tanzania will not be among the 10 African nations that are to proceed to the third and final round of qualifiers for the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. The Kilimanjaro Stars had hoped to fly above their opponents, but their dreams have now been deferred until the next qualifiers. CGTN's Isaac Lucando has more.
Taifa Stars, Tanzania's national football team, has had to shelve its dreams of qualifying for the World Cup next year. In the second round of qualifiers, it finished third in Group J with 8 points behind Benin and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The government says even getting this far in the qualifiers is a sign that the country is on the right track.
We all know as Tanzanians that at the level we are at now, under the supervision of the National Football Federation and the Sports Ministry, our national football teams are capable of getting to the World Cup.
Despite having the lowest rank in Group J, some early wins gave indications that Taifa Stars might go far. This sports analyst says not having enough foreign-based players hampered the team's ability to do well.
If you have 3 players in Serie A, 4 in La Liga, 6 in the English Premier League, 7 in the Bundesliga, you can do well, like our peers Nigeria and the like, who when taking part in the Africa Cup of Nations or any qualifiers, you see that they have experienced people.
Tanzania has struggled to do well in African and World Cup qualifiers. It took the country some 39 years before qualifying again for the Africa Cup of Nations after managing to qualify for the first time in 1980. Ranked 131st in the world, Tanzania has had it rough in its attempts to make it to the World Cup. The Tanzania Football Federation, however, believes small gains made over a long period of time may be just the thing that helps the country achieve its dream of getting to the world's biggest football stage. With 3 Council for East and Central African Football Association Championship trophies won, Tanzania is hoping to leverage its strength regionally, the lessons learned in recent qualifiers, and perhaps a bit of luck to one day get to the World Cup. Isaac Lucando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Well, senior government officials in France, including the sports